Recording in progress.
Burton, you and I have to be good.
Oh, yeah, recording in progress, that Jules and me,
Yes.
no more jokes about that, okay, that's the other wrong way.
Is
Each one is designed for a congregation that holds 12 people.
Wow.
Two. Wow. And it's
sorry,
like,
Tom, we're gonna have to go home. I know your heart wrong.
I need to just remember to.
I keep having visions of your hard drive in a case.
Well, I asked Coda and he said that Pro, like it goes on the desk. They like took it because like the humidity we have in Turk.
I think they
So-
took it.
So I called them and he said they would call me back. soon.
I bet they.
So I'm crossing my fingers.
I'm sure they have, because
Yeah.
I think they went through and like kind of took anything.
He said like
Electronic,
anything that was on the desk, they.
Right.
so I'm sure it was.
Everything like he mentioned, like, computer station.
Well, a couple of those file cabinets too, smell, just FYI, don't leave.
Yeah,
So I learned cracks.
It's really,
Is it a mold?
it's really frustrating.
So we do need to officially.
Yeah. I think that as far as any direction, we're gonna cover that during the regular agenda. To add to that. Council, any further discussion on the work station before we close it out?
A little thing, but I love that public works came out. It was day after Christmas. And so I think you said there's probably 7 of them.
Yeah.
That like really kind of.
That's really, we were there, pushed all the water out of the building, cause
Yeah.
we went, got almost every squeegee from Home Depot.
Yeah.
And then so Surf Pro was not gonna be able to come out for a couple of days, but apparently they came out.
They came out pretty much right away and.
On the 24th.
The next day, they were like starting to work, and then definitely by Tuesday of that week, they were really.
The day that we got that they cleared the asbestos survey,
Yeah.
they started the demo. It was like,
The
as
29th.
soon as they got the survey, they were in.
Yeah, commercial buildings, no matter what year they were. Required asbestos survey, and I don't think we've had one before because the building was built in 2004. So, yeah, that day, like, I think they were out here doing the removal, like, before, like, within, like, a few minutes after we got the notification. It was like,
Is the ink dry?
Just a comment of prioritization, obviously the council chambers.
Mhm.
And so if there are any decisions that we have to make quickly, will let us, we can quickly make those, so we can get that council chamber fixed as quickly as possible.
I don't think in the backup we like prioritize it, but if we could walk away tonight, the flooring
Okay,
and if, I guess deciding about that, we'll call it
Wire- and any
the
of the
court
wiring.
office and the
Yeah.
wiring and the
And
court office.
And the
Not
possible remodel there.
Those
so
would be
the
great.
decision would be what type of flooring, but we don't know if the concrete can be buffed or not.
We're gonna try the buffing no matter what.
Okay,
We're gonna try the buff.
and then the second one is what decision about the AV office, or what?
Well, I guess immediately after we decide on the floor, then we need to decide about the trenching.
The trenching,
And
right?
then third would be, are we gonna go with basically expanding the lobby, taking out the court office?
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, take action. And I would vote yes for that and vote try buffering. And then the luxury vinyl seems like a really nice option. Because like.
We have a vote to take action.
We can't take it.
We have an action later tonight.
Next night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so our regular activities, yeah.
Oh,
This is
right,
just-
right, okay.
yeah. The other item that we talked about this briefly, that I think is in our backup is going ahead with direction staff to put an RFP together for the, document, like the electronic document scanning, so that we can just get that taken care of. With, we don't want to lose documents, obviously, but we also want to make sure we can save. And I think that would be, you know, the direction staff to be part of our discussion. Any other comments? We are going to adjourn at 5:58 p.m. our work session. Council, do we need a quick break before we start our regular meeting? We want to get right to
Rock and roll. Let's go.
switch gears. And as far as the Zoom, are we all set up?
We are, Barbara is on, Attorney Barbara's on via Zoom. Barbara, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me? Yes.
Hey, Barbara.
Hello, hello.
Good sound.
Yeah, great.
That's on, so the speaker is right here between council members Rosenberg and Young, and then there's a speaker behind the podium. And we did some testing earlier, and it should pick up all the voices in the room. Just remember, you know, it's gonna pick up all, no, it's so just try to be as quiet as possible.
And will we have anybody else joining us virtually tonight?
If there's, if item number 11 doesn't get approved on consent, Carrie with Men Collaborative will be on if we need to, or if we have any questions or discussions. But other than that, I don't, unless a resident decides to join via Zoom, we don't have any other like applicants or anything. The TML rep for the city hall. So if we have some insurance questions.
Oh, good.
And the adjuster possibly. No. TML.
The time is 6 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and call to order a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Sunset Valley for Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. And council, as we've been talking about, for residents who may not be aware, we're in a state where we can't use our regular council chambers because of damage over the holidays where there's some flooding. And so we're set up right now. We're going to have the council meetings and other committee meetings occurring in our EOC training room at the police station until the repairs are done for the council chambers. So pardon our, shift if there's any awkwardness. We'll try to make sure we take your feedback and adjust as best we can. Members of the public, we do have some chairs, limited seating here. So we know that and recognize that there'll be some items probably in future agendas will be anticipated from a larger group crowd, but we'll also have some guidance if we anticipate that, if we need to like queue people, if we need to go back to that. Thank you to staff for accommodating our shift, but also for all the work that you've been putting in addressing the flooding and work that was done, especially with the Christmas holiday itself. I mean, a lot of staff members who have rather been at home, but they came in and I couldn't say more nice things about them when I was here. Just how pleasant everyone was and eager to get the job done. So appreciate that, and also just look forward to making this an opportunity for us. We'll get to that item when we get to later in our agenda. With that, I'll open up for public comments. So if there's members of the public who wish to speak at this time, we do have our podium. Just to make sure that people can present the council. Do you want to speak as a member?
Yes.
So I would ask, just so that we make sure this is done right, good step up to the podium.
Sure.
Just so there's a clear difference between your role as a council member and then
I just wanted to thank the Sunset Valley Team Commission who got Google Fiber in the meadows. Thanks to Gary Collins for coming and speaking at council. Thanks to Jill Tetsman, her sister, Ms. Collins, and Rose Padilla. Thanks.
We're almost there. Yeah, I think just as an update, where all these things done in the meadows and villas, now we're connecting it to the actual main fiber connection on Jones for the meadows, and I'm sure over, or villas and for the meadows, this one have a connection. Yes, excited about that and what it provides as an opportunity for the providers and alternative.
That's exactly what we saw when Randy and I, 3 years ago, went to Onion Creek to research what Google does when they do microtrenching. And that's what we saw. It's like, what's the issue? And here we are 3 years later.
Any other public comments? As a note, to the council, we do have on the town hall e-register statements. Several of those are in related to either the open space plan or to item number 12, which is our outdoor hardware on those. So if you haven't had a chance to look at those, I encourage you to do so as before we get to those items. Councilor Johnson.
So there's,
Here for
there's no admin report or anything this.
We do staff reports at the well, we do it the first meeting, so we'll resume staff reports. I figured that
Yeah. No,
staff
that's
reports is pretty much the city hall items.
So, okay.
We'll have staff reports of February 7th.
Okay. I can follow that.
Personally, I like it when they only have staff reports because there's probably not a whole lot to report every 2 weeks when they just do it once a month versus.
Sometimes it's just general question. There's nothing on here, but you know.
We really shouldn't talk
I
about,
can't ask about it.
let's just talk about it, yep.
Okay.
7.
All right, council, we're gonna move on to agenda number 3, which is consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Councilor Erwin.
I move to approve on consent agenda item number 4, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, and number 13.
All right, so there's a motion to approve on consent. Items are 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 13. Does anybody want to pull any of those items?
I have a question and a comment on item number 6.
That was pulled. Item number 6. And Councilor or Mayorperson Johnson.
We had a late submission for number 7, so gotta pull that one.
So let's pull that one. All right, so we have, the motion is to any further modifications.
Can we go over the numbers one more time? I'm sorry.
4, 8, 9, and 13 are the ones that are there. Councilor Reeves.
I want to pull 13 because I have a really dumb question.
All right, so we'll pull 13. So we, right now it is 4, 8, and 9 are the ones that are on the list.
Like I said, 4, 8, and 9.
All right, is there a second for that? That's right, Mayorperson Johnson. All right, sorry. Oh, sorry. All right, all those in favor of approving on consent items 4, 8, and 9, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, we approved on consent item number 4. Approval of the minutes from December 6th, 2022 regular meeting and December 13th, 2022 fall meeting. Item number 8, authorization of the release of a request for qualifications for financial auditing services for the city. And item number 9, approval of an interlocal agreement with the city of Austin to support the next generation 911 database program. Couple that will take us back to our next item, which is item number 5. Consider an act on approval of the August and September 2022 financial statements. And staff, do you want to give us a quick introduction to this one? I think this has been looked at by Budget and Finance.
Yes, we discussed it at the Budget Finance Committee meeting last Thursday, and the Budget Finance Committee made a motion to recommend the council to approve the statements.
I would ask Councilmember Reeds if she wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. If you can pull up the September period.
The year end or the
Well, the
balance?
September, where it shows the revenues less expenses.
Sure.
It's a really good news story there.
Well,
Yeah, you gotta go toward the end there, a little further. There you go,
Right.
one more. That,
There we
that big old number right there.
There we go.
1.819. That is revenues over expenses for last year. That is very healthy. And if you will recall, less than a year ago, we had all sorts of trauma where we were going to shut down the city and all sorts of things over our financial issues, and it was crazy and overblown. But we are clearly in a very good position, and we should be, thank you to all the county staff for taking care of all of the issues. I know there's still some cleanup issues y'all have to do, but that is being taken care of, and I think that is great. The other thing that I would like to say is that one of the things that was suggested by myself and Councilmember Rosengarten was to look at our financial policies. We make our department heads jump through hoops, because what happened is that the Budget and Finance Committee wanted a lot of granularity for each budget line item, and so it's very discrete line items. But we also have a policy where you can't overspend it by what it is $500. And so it is, and with that, you need a budget amendment, you have to jump through hoops. And that $500 in today's prices is very easy to go over. And it's a lot of jumping through hoops, a lot of things. And I'm not suggesting that we go out of control and all sorts of things. That's not my suggestion at all. But I do suggest that Budget and Finance review our financial policies, either group some of those categories back together, like salaries and overtime, because that seems to be one of the big problems when we have to pay off, when we don't have the headcount, we have to pay overtime. You know, we still have to have our policemen here. So, and we don't need to jump. And we have staff or department heads that we pay to manage that. So I would ask that they review that. So that's my comment.
So, question probably for Kyle. First off, we now have another accountant that was hired.
We have a part-time accountant that starts today. She's here for the week, and then she's gonna be fully remote after that.
Very cool. So again, some of the things that we were kind of worried about with these numbers to start trending upwards. Second, is there a way just to pin those numbers to inflation? Because I think we had talked about this when Sylvia was still here about how small that number is that they can't go over. But that number was set 15 years ago when $500.
About 4 years ago.
Was it? Oh, I'm sorry. But like,
People want to control. You know, you want to be able to see things and control things and make sure things are done right. And I understand that. We all want control. But at a certain point, you know, our role is like the big bowl, you know, we've got to have a little bit of sloshing in there. So
The $200, for example, the $200 purchasing rule, meaning anything over $200 requires a purchase order. That's been in place for, I want to say at least 6 years. And it used to be lower than that back when I first started, but you know, $200 is not quite much, and having to go through the purchase order process. So Kyle's already started working on the Budget Finance Committee, wants to review policies. It's
good.
We've got it on the
meeting
agenda.
too. So Kyle, staff is going to kind of try to prioritize, and I think purchasing the first. And so Kyle's already been looking at just kind of upping all the numbers, and then we'll have that discussion with Budget and Finance at their next meeting, and they'll bring it to council.
That's
Their
right.
recommendation.
So when Councilmember Rosengarten and I, we did a lot of work after that meeting, and we reviewed everything, and we called a lot of cities about what they did. And there are a lot of different resources out there for that information, so what other cities do. So.
That's great.
I was going to say that when I was on Budget and Finance, and I know currently on talking to the chair of Budget and Finance, there was a general consensus that we did need to change those policies, that they needed to be more flexible for the department heads because they were on a thing. But what Budget and Finance was pushing back against was expenditures that were far in excess of those limits. But it is time to change those amounts because of inflation, because department heads should have more flexibility.
All right, any further discussion on this item? I think we can. Motion to approve.
Yes, I move to approve the financial statements for August and September.
Is there a second for that? Councilmember
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. And I'm glad that we'll be having budget finance look at that and bring that back to the future council. That leads to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 6, consider action approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021 or fiscal year 21-23 budget amendment number 17 for various expenses, including salaries, equipment, and facilities. And do you want to walk us through the introduction of this one?
Sure, so this is, this is the final budget amendment, with the acceptance of and approval of the August and September financial statements, and then approval of this budget amendment, we should be able to close out fiscal year 21-22, so that then we can get, the information to the auditor so they can begin the audit, and hopefully we get back on track with our audit so that, and Kyle has also spoken with them, and they should be able to be done with it in time for our, as we prepare for the next year's budget, the 23-24 budget. So the budget finance committee did look at this. They had some questions, especially related to the salary items. That was really the focus of their discussion as far as the PD salary, under budget in the general fund versus the crime control. So we can go over that if council has any questions. I believe Councilmember Young had a question about to staff regarding the engineering. It was really just a coding issue that has now been corrected. Carolyn and Kyle can answer any questions you have, but budget and finance committee did recommend to approve. The chair did abstain, but the rest of the committee voted to approve the budget amendment. So we can answer any questions you have about the individual adjustments. I'm going to also pull up, there's the narrative, and we can jump back up to it, but I'm going to pull up this is just helpful for me. So I'm going to pull up and if you have, so Kyle basically set it up with, there's letters that correspond to what funds each adjustment.
Yeah.
So.
Which is really helpful.
So before I ask my question, I wanted to thank Kyle and Lori and everybody else who's been involved in this, in getting this all cleaned up, getting everything straightened out. You guys have done yeoman work, and I really appreciate it. And I think everybody else who knows about it really appreciates it. However, I asked a question about the engineering line item, and I'm still, you gave me an answer, Carolyn. I'm still confused.
Okay.
Because I understand it was coded wrong and money had to be moved over to something else. But why is there an extra $2,800,000 on top of that? That's a part I'm not understanding.
So there's two engineering line items, basically. There is general engineering.
Right.
And there's plan review.
Mhm.
So at the beginning, I guess of the year, some of the items have been reported to general engineering that were really plan review items,
Mhm.
not general engineering. So once we went back through everything and cleaned everything up, and those codes that were flipped were done, plan review, there was more money spent in plan review than in general engineering. So the $28,000 is in plan review. There was more plans review, more inspection. So plan review covers not just like anything Freeland Turk reviews for site plans and stuff like that, but it also covers ATS and COMAS and all of that. So all of that, there was more work in those areas than was budgeted. So that's where the increase in those areas came from. And so there is a comment on there on the cover sheet that when we did that caused, when they moved that, plan review was over budget and general engineering was fine. It was under budget, just fine. So what they ended up doing, so what's on here is that money from general engineering, they're saying to move that to cover the plan review and just switch it around so that they sort of balance out basically.
Okay.
So it was plan review, and plan review is a recoupable fund basically. So we bill out for that. However, there is a delay with when we get a bill and when maybe we charge, because and I think now currently we've got more money than we paid this year because we recouped from last year. So it just is the timing issue of when we recoup some of those funds.
Yeah, we looked at this the other day, this line item, and again, as Carolyn said, so, this is anytime, Gary Freeland Turk is looking at, let's say, 64.5 Brody plans, right? That there's, the variance that went to for the EVgo charging stations, that has to be reviewed, but those are all recoupable. We then charge, we charge EVgo, we're gonna charge 64.5 Brody. So sometimes there is a lag, but we looked in general and we have recouped a lot more than we've actually charged to that line item this year already. So.
Okay. That's where it is.
So when you say could be funded out of salary and crime control on the general area, engineering, what you mean is.
No, that's for, so the could be funded out of crime control is a note for specifically for the PD salaries, not for engineering.
Not for engineering.
But it's under the engineering line item.
Could,
It's down at the bottom.
oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Right there.
It just looks, yeah.
No, it's coming out of general fund reserve, so it's,
So that's just needs to be erased.
Yeah.
It's just a note for our conversation.
So with that begs another question. My philosophy always on the crime control is to spend it all each year because that is the tax that we impose upon our visitors. And use it on crime control. But this year we have a surplus. Were we going to use that money?
With the budget, we made a transfer from crime control to general fund to leave an amount in crime control that we would end the year with 75,000 because of 3 months of salary.
Yeah.
We estimated about 25,000 a month. So given that we've already, so basically the PD amount that they're over on salaries is almost exactly the amount that crime control is under on salaries. So that's what I'm saying, it could be funded by crime control, but we've already kind of plugged that gap in fiscal year 23.
Oh, okay.
And so let's just fund it from general fund reserves in fiscal year 22. And then it'll get cleared up next year.
Okay, and you will continue to just leave that at a 75,000 kind of level?
Estimating, we're gonna do a transfer that leaves enough money in fiscal year 23 that at the end of fiscal year 23, we should have 75,000.
Okay, okay.
and the coding for the two salaries, right? There were two salaries. They're now being coded to crime. So again, we're trying to pay more,
Good.
including salaries and operational expenses out of the crime control.
Good, excellent. And, okay, those are my questions.
One more comment, which is salary amounts for PD. I think are indicative of, and it says understaffed police department. I know that the amount we're paying for things like overtime and holiday pay and what is rising almost every year. And I think maybe in the future, we need to start looking at solutions to figure out ways to better staff the police department. Because if there's lots of overtime and there's lots of holidays, that means that people are having vacations canceled. They're having to switch around shifts. They're having all kinds of problems, which I assume is a problem with both retention and with morale. So I think that's something we should look at in the future.
Maybe that's a follow question for Chief Carter, just in terms of, how last year looked was in, like, my general question is that an anomalous, to see work in line with what we typically see in these, like to Councilmember Young's point, that maybe think about planning.
Yeah, last year was pretty much common. We've got about a attrition rate that we've been having since I've been here. And we need to plan for it. It seems like we'll lose 2 or 3 a year and the overtime it goes up and we're staffing for like minimum. Like if we were fully staffed, our line number now we're okay. But we're always under that. We should overstaff. We probably would never stay at overstaffed. We added a couple, but at least when we lose a few, we're in normal operations and not in overtime all the time. We seem to be each year. We're always catching up. I'm down 3 now, and so we're in overtime is going to start to go back up again.
Do you see this as just general attrition that most police departments see, or is there something particular about us?
Absolutely their own. These guys are leaving to fill openings at other departments who are all short, right now. You know, the police profession is hurting, it's hard to get candidates and, everybody has so many openings. It's almost like a seller's market, you know, they know they can go somewhere, so someone pays a little bit more, it's not about pay really, because we're competitive, but if they're a little closer to home, if there's an opportunity there that they're not gonna have here, they're going to leave, and I think we should just have, that's kind of, the college football now has this portal that players are going into. It's like a talent portal, and it's the same here.
Yeah.
Places that may not have hired these same officers a few years ago are desperate down there. They'll hire people now that, so we're competing with agencies that normally we didn't compete with them. So, and it's going to be that way for the near future, so. If we want to bring that over to now, plan staffing for this attrition rate that we have.
Any other questions?
We asked that all these amendments that we went through, 17 of them this last year, all be presented when we're working on the budget.
So just as a reminder, just in terms of
Yep.
how we got.
Yep.
to the current stuff.
During the budget process.
Any other questions, council, further discussions, Councilor Rosenberg?
I move to approve agenda item number 6.
The motion to approve, is there a second? That's called Councilor Reese first.
I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. We approve the budget amendments. On to item number 7. Consider act on the appointments. Well, I won't read because it's been modified, but this is the long range financial planning ad hoc committee. So appointing the members to that committee. Again, Matthew, I do send an introduction. I think that's something or link. So. Yeah, so again, Budget and Finance Committee is an item really stemming from them. That they want to see the long range financial plan updated. It's been a while since it's had an update. And so the best way to do that is creating an ad hoc committee, just like the first one that, you know, designed the plan. So the framework was already there. They'll just be, you know, adding to it. And so we've had a total now of 5 So in addition to Jose Flores, Michael Francis, Corbin Graham, Richard Hayes, Justin Litchfield also applied today. And we have two representatives from the Budget and Finance Committee with kind of but the Budget and Finance Committee will have oversight since it deals with financial and budget planning. And we also think it will be helpful to have some of this information as we're moving into preparing the fiscal year budget. So
I realize he owns a house in Sunset Valley, but he doesn't live in Sunset Valley. So can he?
and as I understand it.
He's back in the
I see him
house?
every day walking my dog.
Yeah.
He's back in the house?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so there's 5 applicants. And yeah. Comments? So my one question is that I know we have the framework in place. It looks based on the backup that we anticipate this being complete the summer, I guess 6 months is what's listed in the backup. And is that given that we've had this set up before, or that's reasonable from perspective? I think so. I think because they're not really, there is a framework of a plan in place. I believe, everyone that joined the committee is, they're into numbers, so they're ready to just get into it. And it's just a matter of now, Kyle and finance will have to provide the data, but I think that'll be easier now that he has some extra accounting support, right, for helping to get the data. So, and they still will have to meet and determine, when, how often they want to meet, and how aggressive they want to be to finishing the plan. But I think the idea was to get started as soon as possible so that we would have at least somewhat of an updated plan. It might not be totally complete
by the time we're ready. Well, it should be complete by the time we adopt the budget in the next year. And I know too, they also want to work with the work that Carolyn, the Public Works Committee has already started in regards to infrastructure planning, kind of looking at our long range infrastructure plan. I think that the long range financial plan needs to, coincide with the infrastructure plan.
And can you remind me in our code, do we have a minimum number of members for ad hoc committees?
Ad hoc committees are very, there's really not, there's no guidance on membership, really, even if it should have a chair or not. We always recommend that it does have a chair. We had an ad hoc committee once that didn't have a chair, and I think there were some issues around that. But yeah, that is one thing I think to clean up in the code is to give some structure to ad hoc committees. But currently, no, there's not in fact, the first long range financial planning committee only had 3 members. So
Yes.
We looked, yeah.
And Michael Francis was on that.
Yeah, he was.
So-
And he was the chair, or he was on budget and finance.
Yeah.
There's always been cross.
Council, questions for staff on this one? Sort of Rosemary?
I move to approve the appointment of Michael Francis, Jose Flores, Corbin Graham, Richard Hayes, and Cheston Litchfield to the Long Range Financial Plan Ad Hoc Committee.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. We thank you, Michael, Jose, Corbin, Richard, and Justin for your service in this matter, and looking forward to revisiting this as a move forward. All right, council are now on agenda number 10. Consider act on approval of resolution adopting the parks and open space plan for the city. And just to, we've talked about this, we've had a chance to look at the draft plan, obviously the ad hoc committee that worked on this with our consultants, who's now part of the MEN collaborative that we talked about as part of the, or the folks that were part of the former SKR Robinson and now MEN collaborative. There are several things that adopting the Parks and Open Space Plan would do for us, right? And one is that it formalizes the end of that process, but also allows us to leverage that. We're going out to seek grants. For example, that's one of the items that is identified as the precursor for many grant applications and having some what I want to emphasize is that it doesn't say that we're enacting all portions of the plan. It doesn't mean that we are, doing everything in the details, but it is a starting point of improvement for us. And I think it's something that there's a lot of value in considering the topic. I know that this is also something that a lot of the comments that we've got on the hall are in favor of this because of the work. But I'm just excited that we've already started work on a lot of the things that built into the budget this year, including our retreat plans, the signage, things that are better for. This gives us yet another menu of things to start discussing and choosing. And I'll let staff do any further direction to decide that one before we start and deliberate on it.
Sure. So what we've kind of put together is a resolution adopting the plan, basically saying that it's a guideline for how we're going to kind of look at the parks and open spaces over the next 10 years or so. That it then, as Governor said, it's of an advisory nature. Everything will depend on funding, and there may be changes that happen over time. Then, it would be governed by the needs of the city and available funding, I think, is the last whereas. I think Jerry over here, he told us, we talked a little bit about the benefits of having a plan, even if you aren't enacting everything at one time. You can definitely chime in on that if you'd like. But yeah, I think this is a good step in helping us to get down that path so that we can apply for grants. We can move things forward in some other areas for different parts of the plan that we hope to see different pieces come to fruition at some point.
That's where
Even though you call this a plan, I've been on council long enough to know better. I've been fooled before. I was told you'll have plenty of time to bring up your objections later. And then when time went on, they said, well, where were you? Because early in the stage, you didn't object when we presented it the first time, the second time, the third time. Even when I asked the city administrator when should I bring up my objections? And he said, you'll have plenty of time later. Okay, so I don't want to be that person again. I represent the whole city. There are plenty of people who have had issues with this. And I can't say yes to this whole thing. I can say yes to certain pages, but not to the whole thing. So first, before I go into it, is we have $463,000. Is this $463,000 remaining from the 700,000 set aside for parks and open space? Meaning we spent 237,000.
Yeah, so we did put together, I think the 337,000 was for this year, and that does leave whatever was left over from that funding.
Okay. And then, so that was one, and then we call it a conceptual plan, but we also say realistic and actionable ideas. So I went through every page again and looked at what is my concerns, what are the residents' concerns that I've talked to, and so on. So there are a number of things. So I was looking for my clip earlier, so I wouldn't have loose pages everywhere. And we all have gone through this so many times that we all are worn down. And so it's easier when you're worn down to just say, oh yeah, I'll approve it because I'm worn down. I'm not going to go to that point. I'm going to keep on discussing until we get to a resolution. So on this page here. Okay.
Can you tell me, and then I can.
This is in the Parks and Open Space Plan, page 35.
Oh. Thanks.
Okay, so on one column, it says not supportive or somewhat not supportive, 46% on create opportunities for outdoor fitness. Okay. Then you read the next column and it says somewhat supportive or very supportive, 46%. Like, okay, what kind of data am I getting from this when it's 46 and 46? So it's like, nobody wants anything? Is it a wash?
Pretty much a wash. That some people, about 46% of the population said they were in favor, 46% of the population said they weren't really in favor, and 80% of the population said they just didn't care really.
So it makes it tough when I'm sitting here and I'm supposed to make a decision when I'm going, okay, I'm making a decision for the whole city. And right there, that item alone says, I'm better off if I make no decision.
There's not any, there weren't many outdoor fitness opportunities that were included in the plan, probably for that reason, because there's not support either direction. So
Okay.
that wasn't really an item that was included.
Go to page, that was page 34. Now you see the orange? What does the heading above the orange?
That would be not supportive.
So it continues.
It continues, yeah.
Or supportive.
Or somewhat not supportive, yeah. So adventure activities, and you don't see those in the plan.
Okay. So when you go through and you say, okay, 65% not supportive of pump tracks, bike parks, bicycle playgrounds, skate parks, 52% not in support of developing additional paved walking and biking trails, 68% not in support of developing new sports fields, sports complexes, 47% not in support of developing new playgrounds. That's a lot of folks. Okay, just bringing that to everybody's attention. Then go to page 43. And I'm just going to go through one at a time so that you know my opinions, and anybody else can chime in as we go through each one. Because this is very important. Page 43, Gaines Greenbelt. Says, develop and improve trailhead, maintain trails and control erosion, restore and maintain the upland, woodland, natural areas, monitor fire risk. Every council member should say yes to this plan. Page 44. Page 44, which is the uplands, says relocate farmers market and develop a loading area in the southwest corner. Install an open air farmers market pavilion to provide shade for farmers market shoppers. Install gathering grove space near the farmers market. Install trailhead amenities, including bike racks. Install signage, maintain and upgrade trail system, restore and maintain the upland woodland natural areas, rezone property to parkland, restore and maintain the meadow area. I know the citizens of Sunset Valley, this has been a very contentious item. So I would not be able to vote yes on this.
Well, so Councilmember Rosenberg, I think that where I see this is. We can't, I don't think we can take it piecemeal, right? I don't think we can say adopt this section, this section. I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we can rewrite the plan to be a consensus plan. The reason the resolution it reads as it is, the last whereas, the use of this plan is of an advisory nature, and construction of any parts of the plan will be governed by the needs of the city and available funding. That's us, right? That's the council making decisions. So if we adopt this plan, there's advice. Take the uplands, rezone it. Take the uplands, install trailhead. That's advice. The council can say, no, thank you. Right? That's where our role is with this plan. That's why I see the utility of this plan is really, we're accepting that this is input that has been gathered, and we saw the process. We know that there were some questions, we've done more about surveys, things like that. But it doesn't mean that we are saying we are implementing everything in this plan. It is we're taking the plan as advice, and it's always going to be our role to determine what is the best for the city. We wouldn't have this as a starting point. So that's where I feel that having this is useful. It gives us some guidance. I think if we try to go back and say, let's rework these sections, we're gonna crash out of this plan and not have something, right? I think that's just, that's my thing, at least, That being said, I think it's useful for us to go through these points and say, we're not ready to do something like this yet, because, we don't have the funds, we don't have the backing of residents, things like that. But I would characterize this as, it's advice. That's how I'm interpreting the resolution that we're putting together.
I can hear you. I understand what you're saying, but again, the reason I even started this conversation is because what I've experienced before. So I wanted that out on the table as to why there's hesitation on my part.
Councilmember Young and then Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember.
I'd like to say certain things about this. One is we went through a process with a survey and an ad hoc committee. I think if you look at the survey, it's really quite clear what citizens want and what they don't want. And for the most part, reading the survey and reading this plan, it very much reflects the results of that survey and what people really want. Yes, there are other things that were added in there, but as you say, this is an advisory plan, right? We're not allocating funds for this. That has to happen in the future when we discuss each of these items one by one. But I think it's really important, and it's been a hallmark of every successful organization I've been in, that we have a plan. No plan survives contact with reality, right? Things change, things happen. But having a plan, having that starting point, having a basis from which to proceed forward is absolutely critical. And I don't think if we don't have a plan, then we're kind of back to square one, right? And like I said, we had this long involved community process that everybody got a chance to weigh in on. And I think we need to honor that process.
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Reeds.
So, I agree that we need a plan. I have no problem with that. And I will bring up the experience of the uplands. We adopted the plan and nothing happened. There was a lot of work done by planning and environmental, and that really got invested in it. And then suddenly I came along with an idea for Upper Cougar Creek, and frankly, nobody wanted to listen to me because they were so invested in that plan. And so it was like, and yet there was a lot of controversy over it. So it's like, and I was silly enough to think, how this is not controversial, they'll look. It answers all their needs. Dumb of me. But when people have a plan, they kind of think that that's what we're going to do. So I am going to suggest that maybe we can add another whereas on that resolution that it kind of goes through that maybe each property will be reviewed and commented on it and reviewed and studied and such before any final plan is done. And so people understand that these are ideas, but they're not necessarily set in stone. And so maybe that would make all of us feel a little bit better that, and everybody understands that there's no confusion that we're not necessarily going to do everything on this plan. So, I mean, I have to tell you, I was kind of shocked to read the Lady for Peace that already practically wants to move in the house. It's like, when did we become landlords? Why do we think that's a good idea? That property would be a perfect property depending upon that restaurant. We have the barbecue restaurant there, the new restaurant going in. It might be another perfect property for another very wonderful restaurant that would add a lot of value for our community, for our residents. And so the fact that somehow somebody knows that this is, that kind of shocked me, frankly, and that unnerved me a little bit that what is going on here? Is there a lot of underhanded stuff happening, that things are happening without council decisions? So that way, so I would be happier with another whereas that clearly stated that that before implementation of each section or property, that it would be clearly designed and such, or y'all can come up with a better word, but.
Well, and just to kind of follow up what you're saying, so the next item we're talking about is the Upper Cougar Creek a little bit, and the schematic design. That schematic design is another public process that lays everything out, because once we get to that phase, that's what will someday eventually be built. So it takes it to the next step. So what about if we said something to the effect of, whereas each property will be evaluated through the design process to determine the final design, or the final.
I like that better.
Design. And
I do like that better. And approved by council with input from.
And approved by council.
Or
And
some
public,
with
following
public input. With public input, yeah, and that way, because this plan is huge. And not everybody agrees with everything, but it's like, you know, who wants to fight City Hall kind of thing, right? Okay. And so, you want to do it in pieces and give people chances of opportunities, and they may have some great ideas that we don't even know about, so.
Yeah, I'd be amenable to that, but I think also specifically for your other ones, we're already in kind of like preliminary thought, thoughts about like what else could we do with the routing of the traffic, and that would alter obviously this entirely, right? Or not, I mean, there's things that everybody could, reconceive what we do at that place with a different sort of, traffic and rejoining of this property. So, I mean, I think that's where having that spelled out is fine, and I think I like the process of going, through the task force with, our landscape architect and design firm, and that being another part of the process.
Yeah, and it prioritizes, for everybody, what is our priorities. I think that's.
So, I'm by Lauren Maples. She's a friend of mine that runs Tees. Now I'm very much in the for-profit world. She's very much in the nonprofit world. And so when that was in the Parks and Open Space, like suggestions, I asked a friend of the the nonprofit world, I was like, is this something that a nonprofit would be interested in? Just like go to this page and look at this. And she said, yeah, like, not a lot of money in nonprofit, because that's right there in the title, but so we talked about it, I think, at some point in early December, and then that was it. Holidays came, and then she texted me a couple days ago. She's like, "Hey, should I leave a comment on this?" I was like, "I don't, go for it. This is where you'll do that." So that's why she looked at it. So, yeah, it was just my unfamiliarity with how nonprofits kind of like buying space. And
Yeah, and I love nonprofits, but I'm not necessarily thinking that's our role as a city, so that deserves discussion. So,
no, if it wasn't in the plan as like a possibility, then
Yeah.
I don't think I'm, because it's even farther out of my brain to like connect those two dots out of the ether. What Rudy was saying about, you know, these things pass and then it's just like, well, plan's there, and I can see that.
It's happened.
Yeah.
yeah,
Now, the comprehensive plan is something that state says that we have to have, right?
they recommend.
They recommend that,
Yeah.
and then there's a process, you know, in order to either adopt or amend, you have to go through the public hearing process. Has to go through planning and zoning, which is why we're vetting it with PNE and zoning.
Right,
You know,
and so it's all in the whereas we're putting in here, like how much after we have behind us, so we're kind of revisiting those. But
And-
this is not that.
this is not that, and again, remember the comprehensive plan, while it holds, I think, more legal oomph than this Parks and Open Space plan will, but you know, again, we're trying, as we're going through the comprehensive plan, we're trying not to get into the nitty gritty, because that's where the LDC, that's where the land development code comes in, that's where you have your actual, you know, here's your statutes. Comprehensive plan is, again, just more of a guiding document, just like this is and kind of an advisory guide, you know, this is what we'd like to see, but obviously, we're not gonna be able to implement every single thing. In this plan.
And honestly, if we did everything that was in this plan, I think we would lose a lot of the things I would like about Sunset Valley. Like, it would not feel as country-ish as because it would just be, even though it would be,
Redeveloped.
yeah, even though it would be kind of not like we're putting up a building in a parking lot or anything, but everywhere you turn, you just see stuff built. So I just always saw this thing for ideation and the process of a group that we assigned in the past coming up with cool ideas, and then, you know, we picked a few to start with. That's like, let's go into this one a little bit more, the ADA trail over at Beaver Creek. So that's always worked my mind. There's certain things in here that certain pages I can just pull out and say, no. As it stands, this is a proposed trail in Upper East Drive, and then we've heard about maybe putting a road in there with no super. So it's like. So yeah, that was just my thoughts on this. Generally, yeah, again, I think I've said in workshops before also that the best way to kind of stop the rumor mill spinning in the neighborhood is if we pass this and we're all listen to each other, then we go out there and tell everyone that's not what it means. We're not gonna have to spend that big number at the bottom tomorrow to build all of these things. It's a long process. So if this passes, if somebody comes up to me and says, we're putting a pool in, no, we're almost specifically not putting a pool in. So anyway, that was just my thoughts.
Okay.
Councilmember, oh yeah, sorry. I guess, and then Councilmember.
I've been in Sunset Valley almost 30 years. I've been on I was on zoning for 17 years. I was here when the first this committee was put together, which was about 30 residents. They came up with, or 40, they could never get a quorum, those so many people. But they came up with a recommendation. That recommendation, there were 3 recommendations, went nowhere. The vote was to do nothing, council did nothing. Then there was the Uplands conceptual plan in 2017. That was a conceptual plan that council never adopted and said, this is what we're gonna do. What they did was they bumped it to P&E and said, you go figure out what you could do or what you'd like to see done with this that isn't building a building that is low key. That's well, it was bumped. Council never said, we're gonna do all of this. Right. So it was bumped to P&E. And P&E started looking at the things they liked about phase 1 and phase 2 in that plan. And yes, we were doing a lot of work on it, but we're invested in it because council directed us to look at it. They said, go look at this and look at what you want. And we were bringing that back. And then all of a sudden we had a new city administrator and she came to one of our meetings and was like, what are you all talking about? There's a new sheriff in town. This isn't what we're doing. And so we're like, what are you talking about? This is what we were directed to do by council. So just to be clear, that was 2017. And here we are, 2023 already. And I think part of the reason that things don't get done is because there's no vision. There's no big overall vision. And that's one of the things that this is. This Parks and Open Space Plan is a vision that we asked our residents. This was the most comprehensive resident and visitor input that I've seen in any process that we've done in this city. And the ad hoc committee did incredible work. They had QR codes on their t-shirts for people to, go in and put their comments in. So we have comments. It's what our residents commented. It's not good or bad. It is feedback. It's advice. We asked them what they thought. They told us. Take it with however you want to take it. But without a big vision and a plan, we're never going to get anywhere because we keep saying, oh, this project, oh, that project. No, let's run over here. That's the next shiny thing. So it's no way to run a city. And I really believe we need to have an overall vision, whether we implement and reach to the level of the degree of recommendation is up to council and up to the residents when it comes time to do any of these things, just like Upper Cougar Creek. That plan will go before council and it'll have public comment again. So that's the process. But you gotta have a roadmap or you're never gonna get anywhere. So I'm in favor of adopting this work that our residents, our visitors, and our ad hoc committee that we asked to put time and energy in to adopt this as our roadmap.
As a council member, having to decide whether we approve it or not, I'm more for this than against it on certain pages. Just to give you an example, Jones and Westgate. One of the things is to have artistic, let's see, it's page 55. Page 55 says to have artistic features at Jones and Westgate. Well, Chief already knows our untrained artist has already come through on our painted traffic light control box again, even though it's a mural. So this guy is not going to stop. And I'm looking at pictures that are beautiful. And I'm going, okay, we're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars of something right at the corner of Jones and Westgate. And this guy is going to come and graffiti it. We need to solve a problem. So either we need to fence off Sunset Valley. That's a joke. We need to somehow make sure that our spending of money isn't going to be a high maintenance cost. Then to go to, and I didn't mean to pick on the Uplands, it's just one of them that
I'm used to it.
Okay. Sorry. So page 67. Page 67 is 6107 Brody Lane. It's the Barron's property. Until you walk it, you don't see everything about it. This is one beautiful piece of property. Logic dictates on this piece of property. It's logical to connect it to the existing conservation area. It's logical because right there is the creek bed. It's logical that says, yes, This makes sense. This should be conservation area. Nothing in this plan talks about what we do with the house or what do we do about parking for parkland and green space. None of it says any of that, but yet that was discussed. But items about changing the zoning was in here, but other items discussed never made it. And I don't know who gets to decide what items get in print and what items don't get in the plan. That's on page 67, then go to page 71. Page 71 is the Ann Galt property. 6401 Brody Lane. Same story, different verse. This property makes no logical sense for it to be a park. None. And the first bullet point on here says to change the zoning to a parkland. No sense whatsoever. Here it is a property that is up in the uplands, nowhere near the creek bed. We have residents in the original section of town that flood when we have high water. Of course, we wish we had some rain. But when we have high water and they flood, they have to have high insurance. They have to worry about their livelihood. And we have this piece of property we're talking about making parkland that doesn't connect to any conservation area, no parkland, etc. Do you know why this piece of property was bought as a life state in the first place? Anybody in this room? Anybody online? Please, Barbara.
She wanted it as a park.
Okay.
It was crystal clear
That's not what I heard.
where she died.
Because why that property? Why not Terry Collins' property on Stearns? We have no parks on Stearns and we got residents over there. Why this property? Why a park between two residential houses? Why? I'll tell you why. And I've talked to plenty of people from the original section of town. It was to control development on Brody Lane. They didn't want, thank you, I acknowledge it. It was to control development on Brody Lane. They don't want a lot of commercial on Brody Lane. Now, keep in mind, the original, and nothing against that, if somebody wants to control, and any city can control whatever they want. There's just different opinions, okay? That is an opinion. But there are other people who have an opinion that's a perfect piece of property to sell, to use for farm to garden restaurant, to mitigate for land that floods. This doesn't flood. This isn't anywhere useful as a park area. Anything against the creek bed is smart for us to buy. Becomes parkland when it's not raining, when the creek isn't flooding. It just makes sense. And so I'm sorry, but I use logic in making decisions. And this makes no logic for it to be parkland.
For clarification, the recommendation is not to turn this into parkland, but to GUI, which is different than park. But the first bullet doesn't say park, it says.
Government utility. Sorry.
And so that just to make it clear that we're not talking about strictly a park. There's the recommendations here are a little bit different than that. And also, I think maybe I don't know if there are restrictions in terms of what conveys with property for the life estate that we have to abide by.
Yeah, the contract's been studied, I think there was a belief that turning into parkland was part of the contract, but that really was not. So council would have to, council would have to enact that change. So it is still zoned single family, and I don't believe there's anything. It was our former city attorney, Mount Barbara Wells, that studied that contract. But as far as I understand it from the last memo, that there's nothing binding the city, not restricting anything from the city using property.
The question on how the life estate works. So when she did that, she basically turned the property over to the city. So she was not liable for any real estate taxes, but she was able to live in her house until she died. Is that correct?
That is correct, because when the city owns property, there is no property taxes.
Is that how it works? Do you know if that's how it works?
Well,
I'm just asking.
I mean, I don't know this. I don't know this. We can. I can
They'd have
see
to
the memo.
research.
I can see the memo that kind of.
I've seen it, but I just don't know if that was benefit. I mean, that's one of the benefits that a lot of seniors might want, because a lot of seniors with the rise of property taxes.
Property tax.
So I just don't know who was responsible, who paid the property taxes. Do you know?
I don't know if she paid property taxes or anything. I
I'd
mean,
have to investigate.
yeah, we'd have to look into that, but I mean, basically the city. I mean, she did a lot of the upkeep portion of the house and everything like that. I mean. the
Yeah,
city
but that's
did the
always,
upkeep on the
yeah,
land.
they always have to do that. So, but did we do the upkeep on the land?
We did go in at one point and remove a ton of dead trees from that property, that when Oak came through.
One second, because the city attorney, Barbara, did you have?
Something like this. I just don't know how this works.
I
Are you guys-
just was I was just trying to figure out what your additional whereas clause was and how it fit in with what everybody is saying. That's all.
I think you're.
Carolyn, if you could repeat your whereas clause for me.
So I kind of refined it a little bit, whereas each property will be evaluated through the design process prior to construction. Approved by city council following public input to further refine the city's needs and desires. It kind of follows up from the last one into that one, so I think that would kind of address that, but.
That last, okay, that last part again, I'm sorry, after everything's evaluated, then what?
Through the design process, prior to construction, approved by city council following public input, further refine the city's needs and desires.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. That's helpful.
Following that thing, there's another, like we said, there's another little bit of a public process before we get to.
Yeah, and the good thing about that is that while our residents were able to give input into the plan, they were not really able to give input after the plan was developed. It was kind of done, given to them. This is the plan.
Right.
And so, but this is a way to get that public input.
So everything gets further refined as we get closer to
Like that.
construction.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, has there been an opportunity?
I'm sorry. Yeah, we still, even though we're in the small room, we still have to maintain the quorum. So if you're in the audience.
Maybe there'll be a public comment opportunity before this begins.
There will.
Okay.
We're having a council discussion first, and then before we proceed with any, vote, we'll make sure there's a for the public. Councilmember Rosengart, did you want to continue?
I wanted to also add that I had spoken with a resident who was on a committee with Ann Gall, and she said at the time of this happening, Ann Gall was so ecstatic that she wouldn't have to worry about finances. Not once did she say ecstatic that her property was going to be parkland, just that she didn't have to worry about finances. And that's fine.
We can work through that later at some point, but those are all excellent points.
As spoken before, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I just too, as this kind of refinement and adding this last statement, as we'll see in the next agenda item, and Carrie with men can speak to it, but in the schematic design process of if council chooses to approve this task order number 1, there's built in 2 meetings that there's like a community, another community meeting to talk about, the schematic design for the Upper Cougar Creek. They want to do, men wants to do a joint meeting with P&E and CED, and so that's a part of, that's actually built into the task order, so.
That was really, a kind of a walkthrough like we did would be really helpful to do that too, for that.
So as funding and energy becomes available for other projects, the same, process could be applied to get more input and stakeholders.
As a result.
Something else I wanted to add. On the part, usually when we have a project that's on the agenda, we can pull it apart and approve certain parts and then decide to have other parts brought back. So Mayor, this is your discretion. So are you saying you're not going to allow us to pull things apart on this? Like I said, we're closer together than we are further apart with my opinions. I haven't heard from everybody here. So if we approved portions of it and then worked on the items that we didn't all feel comfortable with, for instance, just saying, for instance, on the rezoning on the Barron's property, let's pick on that one, the Barron's property. going to Parkland. That makes sense, but there's no discussion about the house or if there's potential for parking, etc. The house, something has to be decided on sooner than later, because when a house is sitting vacant like that, no running water, no electricity, you then have potential of more loss, greater loss on the property, unless the property is going to be totally demolished. And then, yeah, and then on what other property was I mentioning? On 55, even though it's just a plan, pull out artistic and maybe put in landscaping, because a untrained artist won't mess with landscaping, but they will mess with art projects. Just a thought.
So there's a couple thoughts. One is that this is the plan as developed by the committee and given to council, right? So we're accepting the work that they've done by accepting this plan. We still have the backup, in our resolutions, especially with the added language, which is decisively putting anything that we enact or enable in council and the public process. And so I think that's where I'm okay with, having a plan that, may not have every item that the individual council would want. We could, if there was a motion that said, I want to approve this with these changes and the council agreed to it, that's another approach, right? The council could say there's a majority of the set of like language in these sections, we redline it, essentially, and we say that that's, that's something that would take additional time and, would potentially, I don't know if we could get to the consensus that we're looking at, for, without going back to, either another committee or, prolonging the process.
It doesn't, I would say it doesn't have to go back to another committee. It simply is council.
So that's not what certainly say, I'm not comfortable with the language, I want to propose some deadlines and bring it back, with an alternative version of this so that, it's clear that this is council's amended plan to what was presented, right? And that's what we're about. Like I said, I'm comfortable with a resolution giving us the authority on enacting anything, and especially the consideration of the public process for each parcel. The fact that we don't specify the building in that area, we've already actually taken action as council. We budgeted for demolishing that building, and it's in our budget. So it's part of something that council already taken, and authorized.
Please forgive me. We agreed to demolish the building on the Barron's property, because that was the better, please forgive me, I forgot too many.
That was $100,000.
Oh, the holidays happen.
So in our budget, we adopted $100,000.
Yes.
Construction of that building.
But we haven't, yes, in budget, we put money aside for demolition because we weren't certain of its condition and we thought it would be demolished. And then when we walked it, even Council Member Johnson agrees with this statement, we realized it's a pretty nice looking house in better shape than the Ann Galt property. So there was hesitation. Do we want to demolish it or not? So
I think before we demolish anything, we'll first come back. And at that time, if we think there's a better use for it, or if we think that we're going to hold off on doing that.
We could sell it and somebody could take it and put it on another piece of property somewhere else.
It's also how close to a sequel.
We're working on getting the terrestrial geologist out to do an evaluation on that property. And the building is like covered in asbestos too.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of time.
Never mind.
Councilor Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilor.
I think my question was just the Barron property, the 100,000, and the regulation parking. Everything was. It does say parking for 6107. We already approved the money for. Excuse me, tearing down the house. And then the other one that I have my hand up for a while was the zoning change on golf was the GUI. Need some help with programmers. Sorry, but I know this is maybe a leap of faith for some council members, but I think it's just a plan, and I'm not one to just say go do this. So I feel like approving this And then each page of this could be figures in the making, you know, like,
10 years.
well.
15 years. It's been 30 years.
Cause I just don't. I don't have an appetite for just person through and just doing all of this. I think it's just a plan that had it, as Aaron mentioned, it had a lot of resident feedback. It had a pretty good size ad hoc committee that was involved in it. So I hear you on some of these, on some of the things that you disagree with, but I think there's another time that we can talk about those instead of just taking this big document and just saying like, no, on this page, because I don't know. That's me.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing I can point to is that our future land use map is always been like a blueprint, but it's not, but we still have things in the future land use map that we haven't taken action on, like there's zoning changes in there. That's always councils, you know, that were, even though that the future land use map was adopted or approved, you know, 13 years ago now, or whatever it was, it doesn't mean that it's going to be done exactly like that. You know, that's actually a more legal, you know, kind of time that this, yeah. But like I said, if council wants to go to the option of reopening this up and, you know, suggesting edits, that's an option. I'm sure that we have enough flexibility, especially with the resolution, if we have the amendment of the official whereas, that I feel confident that council can move forward incrementally with a thoughtful approach to each parcel, right? And that may be completely different than what's in these after changing circumstances, evolving conditions, and additional resident input, because when we get to, you know, the next property 2 years from now, the makeup of the city is going to be slightly different, and there may be some other things that people are asking for that we now have we have these properties that we can capitalize on, right? You know, for and when I say capitalize, I don't mean the monetary sense. I mean they are actually essentially, you know, they could be multiple uses, and it could be the best use is something that aligns with, you know, the kind of the additional developments going on the road. It could be that there's a better use based on resident feedback. Say 2 years from now, maybe there's 100 people that move in and say swimming pools now. We know, but that's always like the city government has to respond to, is that it's an evolving set of conditions. And then Councilor Young, and then and I do want to open up for public comments, make sure we get an opportunity for folks here to give their feedback as well.
I want to reiterate a couple of points that other people made, especially the one that Councilmember Medic has made about this being a vision. I'm good with the additional language added in here, which I think is inherent in this document anyway. There is a lot of, when we start breaking down the individual pieces of this, there is still a lot of process to go through. Both in terms of citizen input and what the council wants to do. And none of it can happen until council decides to go ahead with it and fund it. So I'm sure that not all the things that are in this plan will ever happen. And probably all the things in this plan should never happen as a whole, right? We'll work it out as we go along. But I think it's important to have that vision and that plan in place as a whole for us to go forward successfully.
All right, well, we'll open up for Simon, and then actually any other questions or comments the council has. So with that, I'll invite the members of the public that are here to speak. If you can step up to the podium and state your name and address.
Okay, I'm Burton Pearson, I'm 39 Pole Road, I'm now a member of the Planning and Environmental Committee. A tremendous impact. I think this survey that was done of the people was one of the most answered, responded to surveys we've ever had in Pleasant Valley. And I think it's very, very important now that we not water down the will of the people, the majority of the people that have spoken. And I feel like, since what the mayor told us to begin with, that there's flexibility within this plan, I see no need for any other language to be added to it before the vote. I think it's a matter of just, and anytime in the future, what happens in democracy, people vote on the current circumstances and what they think they want for the future. And therefore, we need to listen to those people. And right now, our job as representatives of the people is not to argue with their will, or think that their will isn't logical, but to carry out their will. We have quite a bit of erosion of democracy in our country because we're not listening to the will of the people. So I think it's really important now. And I want to totally recommend that we accept this plan as is without.
Anybody else wish to speak at this time?
Once Gonzalez, 2030s. I think it's a particularly well done plan. I thought it had a lot of input. Their plan is perfect. But so much was waiting on this plan. Julie had our vision, especially in planning environmental. We said, we're gonna see what everybody says. And then we can do things. And then when we budgeted for this, we said, let's take the low hanging fruit. Because again, we're gonna have to do some more planning. And so we put money in the budget for the low hanging fruit. And, you know, Upper Cooper Creek moved back up there again. There's always a lot of conversation in this town. And so I think we need to move forward and everything has been holding, all other plans have been holding until we adopted this. And so we need to adopt this and move forward. And we have money already in the budget in this process. So I would really encourage you to adopt it as is. Knowing it's not a perfect document, nothing ever is. And knowing it's fluid, everything is in the best of times. We can say it's concrete, it's still gonna flow. So, you know, thanks.
Any other members of the public wish to speak? Council, further?
Yes, first apology for my coughing, I have a tickle and the throat is like driving me crazy. I am okay with the plan as is with that additional language in the resolution. So that it is very clear because that we are going to get public input on the changing processes because this final plan did not have the public input. Had some hot tea. The final plan did not have really a lot of public input and discussion. It was just for them, here's the plan. And so, then that will allow really in-depth analysis. And I think that will be a really good process. And it'll be a better process because it'll be really focused because it's really hard to focus on every one of those properties, frankly. And so once we prioritize and focus and get that in there. So I don't believe it's inherent in the wording. For some people may read that in, but I really like things spelled out very clearly that everybody understands. So.
And just also as a reminder, so in addition to, for example, the public feedback process that MEN is going to undertake, or if their task order is approved, for some of these other properties where the zoning change has to take place, in our land development code, there's a public hearing process built in. So,
yeah, that's true.
It will be mailed to residents within 500 feet. We will advertise it. So again, before a zoning change happens, there will be there's even more public process before the zoning can even be changed.
And another whole other group of people that weigh in on it.
Yes.
Councilmember Medicus and then Mayor.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the Parks and Open Space Plan presented to us by the ad hoc committee.
Do you want to add the suggested language from the additional, or the
yes.
edited resolution, I guess?
Adding the additional language to the whereases.
What is that language?
Carolyn?
It is whereas each property will be evaluated through the design process prior to construction and approved by city council following public input to further refine the city's needs and desires.
I second. There's a motion on the table so that it's opens up for further discussion. Councilmember Rosenberg.
Can we loudly put somewhere that this is a plan and a plan only. Is there
It says
somewhere?
in their guideline.
I know, like I said, I've been down this road before.
That resolution.
Maybe legal can weigh in. Is there some way we can stress this, that this is just a plan? This is not an absolute, this is not a,
The use of this plan is as.
I know it says
advisory
plan,
nature.
but trust me,
When is, we can bold that.
yes. Bold it, underline it, color it, whatever.
Well, I will say that I think that, okay, so everything that's above,
I've got it highlighted.
yeah. Everything that is in this, that is, kind of above the now therefore is, I mean, I think you can strengthen maybe that last whereas. It's not just the needs of the city, but it's the approval of the city council. Will be governed by the needs of the city and subject to final review by the city council and available funding.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, were we looking at?
The-
Yours is.
Mine is on that.
Yeah, we should.
It says, whereas the use of this plan is of an advisory nature, and construction of any parts of the plan will be governed by the needs of the city and city council.
Should it say as approved by city council?
As approved by the city council.
Barbara?
Yes.
Sorry.
Legal.
Should that be as approved by city council?
Yes. I've had my words taken away from me, so I'm waiting till it comes back up.
No problem.
That one is the fire.
Will be governed by the needs of the city. And,
Advisory nature.
and Barbara, can you help
And
me?
as approved by city council.
Well, I mean, subject to approval by city council. I mean, it really is subject to y'all's final approval. So subject to,
And none of this would happen without all of the planning and everything that goes into the process of. any
and
project.
approval of available funding. Go back.
We're coming back.
The last
Oh,
where.
she's finding the.
But
other
yes, I
whereas.
like that whereas. I told Carolyn I can't type as fast as she speaks.
We'll fix the formatting
Approval
later.
of available funds.
What?
And approval of available, oh yeah, that's right, correct. Good. Yeah, I like that.
I think that's pretty. cool.
Barbara, do you think they should be switched in the order? And that-
Yes, I was just thinking that myself.
I think that's.
Sorry. Rudy, do you think that gets you where you want to be?
It's
Closer?
closer. It's in writing. Yes, the word, I just want it, I want everybody sitting in this room and listening in to understand that there's too many times, because we said plan and design and all this, they thought it was a done deal. And I want to make sure everybody knows, if I agree to this, I'm agreeing to a plan that could be flexible, moved, changed, etc. It is not something that is absolute.
Should,
I think you've got that with these whereas clauses.
Thank you.
it almost seems like the available funding should be before the final approval of the city council. Am I? Is that silly? Just like anything would be.
Like, you don't want to approve something unless you have the funding. So you want to get the funding first.
Okay,
Any further suggestions, then do you approve the motion maker, do you approve the language, and as the second, do you approve the language?
Good job.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of approving the resolution adopt, the amended resolution adopting the Parks and Open Space Plan for the city, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, thank you very much, council, and thank you for the public for your input. So I believe that maybe it's a vision for our city, and
Yes.
one of those visions is agenda item number 11. Good segue. So, consider act on the following items for Mint Collaborative in Upper Cougar Creek. So, council, what's before you said we're in our retreat, we made a recommendation, or based on staff recommendation, but also council decision to approve entering into an agreement with Mint Collective. This is the actual agreement that's been brought back. We're structuring this similar to what we did with Freeland Turk and our engineering task force, where each of these will be a separate task order if we decide to expand their services to other parcels of land or other aspects of the city. The beginning one is, of course, that River Creek, because that's where we had budget set aside in our city budget. So I'll actually hand it over to staff for any further discussion we do have. And then cover your own call as well. So Carolyn, do you want to give any further?
Sure, so there's basically a few parts to this that we're looking at. There's the general services agreement with Mint Collaborative, kind of formalize that relationship between the city and Mint. And then the first task order, which is the Upper Cougar Creek project. So that project, that task order is really kind of two parts. It is schematic design for the whole property, where everything's going to be, where things are going, and it kind of lays out what is in there. And then taking the construction of the trail to construction and getting it constructed. So what accomplishes is, and as said in there, there's some things that we have to have signed off by a civil engineer for TCQ purposes. So we'll have a separate task force for Freeland Turbines. But what will happen with this is doing the schematic design for the whole property means that we've got a lot of the foundation for future WPAPs that we're going to be doing for any other construction. Already done. So the geologist report for the property will be done. The survey for the property will be done. So there will be a lot of like things that are checked off that will help move the future development down the line as well. And so there is a nice public process that's also included in kind of refining that schematic design for the property. I believe you can go back to task phase 1 and it tells you how many like go back to phase 1, design services delivered. It's that schematic design. So there's some open house events, a little bit more survey work, and those combined meetings, which I think will be very important to have combined meetings between planning and environmental and CED, so that everything, all different perspectives are kind of, you know, presented in that group. And so I think that's a really good, and then presenting to city council. And then taking that schematic design and moving forward the trail portion of it through construction documents and construction phase kind of thing. So I think right now it's looking at, I think there's an estimated timeline in there. So it's about 13 to 14 months for that process to get from schematic design to you've constructed a trail basically on Upper Cougar Creek. So that's where we are with that. And the other one is to go ahead and move forward with the survey on the property survey. It's not been surveyed. Well, the whole property has not been surveyed. Because that'll be necessary for any tree. Because that'll give us all the information about tree location and everything else we're required to have for any kind of construction documents.
Questions for staff on this item? That's very rich.
So trail net amenities at Park Entry, is that like signage and things like that? Is that what that is?
It could be signage. It could also be if the maybe a gateway kind of feeling to it as well.
Okay.
So I think that
So it could be architectural.
it could be, yeah, it could have something that's a little bit more than that. So that can come out of schematic design to give us some kind of the gateway feel. And that's, I think, the benefit of doing this with landscape architect. It's going to have a little more to it than.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I have a question. On the schematic design that was done by our city engineer, they had walking trails already designed. Can this company use that design?
That was the conceptual design, it wasn't to the schematic phase. And so when they laid that out on the conceptual design,
Yeah.
they did not have a survey of the property.
Okay.
And they can't really use that. Now, the general idea of where.
And I know the
it's gonna go
difference, I
is gonna-
understand.
Is gonna be in the same area. It's gonna be a couple loop trails that connect ERW, we're gonna somehow connect that. Dead end sidewalk on ERW, we're gonna create some loops, we're gonna have some like entries off of Brody and things like that, so.
So when I saw Brody in there, and that's the bridge right there, so how are we gonna get up on it? How do we get up on, so on the, I'm looking at the open parks open space plan.
Right,
Where, again, this is what you were just saying, like, they can't really use this because they're gonna wave in their hands. But then this med document does say connection to Brody.
and the plan was always to have some kind of, I think, entry off of Brody into the area. So there is this part of the schematic design, may be that there may be a bridge or a boardwalk kind of portion that's gonna bring us down into Upper Clear Creek. That's something that will be designed through that process. I'm not sure how that's gonna happen exactly right now.
The amount of money we set aside for a ADA trail through there was $200 and
Something $1,000, yeah.
245,
263?
is 260, 300. Let's make it. Does this 60 grand come out of that?
Yes.
It does.
The 60
okay.
grand, so we'll be coming out of that, and so then we'll get to construction, and if, we'll see where we're at with, but it will bring us closer to having first a really good project for us to start with,
Yes.
and it will give us the foundation for any future projects that we're going to do, so it's a good launching point.
We passed the amount for that, and I'm glad that this amount is in that to whatever. The connections of, I mean, I run here, and so that's a bridge. And so in order to be on that property, I don't know, if we're building some sort of ramp to go down. Is that part of it?
Yeah, it's all the way to,
Oh,
I think it's like just the edge of it, on the floor looking at it. I think they're, like, I can see them how they might be
This is
like.
the property, so this is just.
yeah, I think there are ways, and it may be that the city also pursues easements through La Madeleine or something like that, that is part of the process. It says, oh, we're gonna build a trail connection here, we need to go.
I
to the
just
city
hear-
to involve La Madeleine.
I just hear some of the nicer things that we can have as entries. And then, but that wasn't even in play when it is an eye-watering number for a trail, which I went into. And I'm fine, so we spent like 40 grand on a trail the end of, which again was just nature trail, it just had to be cleared and green works to do a bunch. That was a long trail. And so the chances of this staying in under 260 or whatever it is,
Yeah, we'll have to see what conditions are, where we are when we get to construction, everything will change. We are using a different product, before we were using Stalock, we're going to a different product, stabilizer, that's actually a little less expensive. So we're looking at for the granite gravel choices and stuff, so we'll have to look at where we are. Actually, we did that trail for a lot cheaper than 40,000, I can get you that number, but we did better than that.
So the cost is because of the ADA accessibility, the higher cost, correct?
Right, to make it an ADA accessible trail, I mean, if we were just, bushwhacking some weeds and stuff down,
Yes. Yeah.
it'd be $50,000.
which I understand that these are not, but still, I start to hear things. And already hard pill to swallow is getting, it's like, well, you're actually gonna have to swallow too. So, okay.
That's for Rosinger.
Regarding the contract itself, is Mend Collaborative online?
Yes, Carrie's online.
Okay, a couple of questions. The first one, it says every year that's going to be built in a 7% increase in salaries. Is there any
Yeah,
There's a
the,
year,
can you all hear me?
yes,
Okay, that is to adjust for the cost of inflation. This is going to be a several year contract, so that the intention of that was to adjust for the cost of inflation as time progresses and our contracts continue over the course of several years.
well, the reason I brought that up, because even in budget and finance, when we do the long-range plan, we always use 3% for adjust for inflation. So when we're talking 7%, we're behind the 8. So is there any room for negotiation on that?
Sure, I definitely think that's possible. How does that work in terms of adjusting this contract and then, you know, getting it reapproved? I would have to talk to some of my partners to make sure that that would be okay.
The person at $250 an hour then becomes $267.50 an hour within 1 year. And it's hard for us to budget. We all have to work with a budget when all of a sudden we're going up 7% on all the staff, and we don't know what all staff is going to be. You're working on this project for 13 months. And we don't know which all staff is going to be working on the project at which time, but that really makes it tough for a budget. And again, like I said, when we do a long range financial plan, we look at 3% for inflation, and here we are at 7%. Sorry for repeating.
Sure,
Then
that's understandable.
Okay, so could we do 3% on that?
Yeah, I think that should be fine.
Okay. Next question. It does say that either party can go ahead upon 7 days written notice to the other to terminate the agreement. So I appreciate that. Who is going to be responsible for this project on completed work for compliance with the scope of work? Let me repeat. It's on section 4, review of work. A says the city shall, oh, I'm sorry, this is a question for the city. The city shall review the completed work for compliance with the scope of work. I want to know before we start, who is going to be this project person? So who would that be?
Probably for Upper Cougar Creek, that would be me.
Okay.
And I think it will depend on the project we have available. So if it's for landscape youth services, it may be Matt actually that does that with signing off on final site plans and stuff like that nature. But I think for Upper Cougar Creek, it's probably that they meet. Any of those.
And it all depends, you know, on the level, you know, like that's why, you know, we know for Upper Creek, there is going to be some of the work that Freeland Turk, our city engineers, wanted to review. So it just depends upon the scope of work, I believe.
I just want to know that we have a person that has enough time, enough bandwidth to take on this project. And that this person is going to be the one person we go to get what's going on and what's an update.
And there will be times too that, and again, the benefit I think of having them on retainer is, for example, we've got plans in motion for the pocket park at 4715. Right, that will actually, you know, it's not a city-owned park, but it's being put in as part of the, you know, agreement with that developer. We'll have services of men to review those plans, and that developer will then pay men for that plan review. So that's another benefit of having this agreement in place.
Okay.
So not only for city projects, but for other projects as well.
Okay, next question is on F. You don't have page numbers on this, so I can't refer to a page number. F, where it says no warranty, other than performing its services pursuant to the standard of care, landscape architect makes no representation or warranty with respect to its performance hereunder. Whether expressed or implied, client acknowledges and agrees that neither AR nor any of its affiliates use AR a number of times. I know young folks use in abbreviations. What is AR?
I believe that's a spelling error. I'll have to correct that and get it back to you.
And there's a couple of them in there. Same paragraph, just there's 3 of them.
Okay.
think it's as per Robert's.
Supposed to be men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, I think you're right, because I said, okay, architect, what is it?
Agents representative.
We think it's their competition. We're teasing. And next question, I'm sorry, I gotta scroll down. Carrie, if you look at the signage where you have to sign the page,
Mm-hmm.
next page, keep going. Keep going.
Oh,
There, you signed underneath Sunset Valley.
Oh, okay. Thank you for catching that. Sorry about it. So there's a couple things to update in this contract, it seems.
Okay, so you're gonna bring this back
Yes,
or
we could
approve it with these
the-
changes, but we'll see these changes?
yes.
Those done?
Yeah, the mayor will see it. Yeah, I think we can move forward with approving with the changes, but if there's additional changes that we want.
Okay.
Sorry.
I move to approve on adopting. Sorry, I'm on the wrong agenda. So many pages. Approval on agreement with Men Collaborative for landscape architect and urban design services for the city with the salary increases of 3%, with 3 typos AR to be removed and correct whatever's supposed to be in there. And then the signage is supposed to be over under men.
That's A. Do you also want to, do you want to treat B and C separately, or do you want to include those?
Oh, sorry, you're right. There's 3
So
parts
B is
to it.
the task order for Upgrade Creek. C is authorizing staff to receive it obtaining a survey of.
And approve B and C.
So the motion is to approve the agreement with the edits as discussed, with approval of the task order 1 and authorize the capture survey of approved Creek. Is there a second for that? Councilor Reeds.
I will second, and thank you for those eagle eyes, boy.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Any members of the public wish to speak to this item? All right, all those in favor? And Kari, just to confirm, you're okay with those changes?
Yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, thanks, and thank you for Men's for joining the city. Looking forward to the work that we're going to be doing with you and doing work that you guys helped us with on the open space plan project.
Yep. And thank you for letting us work with you. We're looking forward to it.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council. I'll take us to item number 12. Consider national approval of the collaborative outdoor art mural to be displayed on city facilities in an amount not to exceed $11,600. And we can start with either staff or any customer, and this is your item also, so we got a preview of it earlier, but staff, do you want to start with an overview of this item?
Sure. The Arts Commission has been discussing this project for
6
6
months.
months. I was gonna say 6 months. And it's just a part of a larger discussion that the Arts Commission has been having for years about bringing more art in public places. And this is specific to the city facilities. Last year, the Arts Commission was very happy that council adopted the art in public places policy, which is kind of a, a guideline for vetting art, both, around the city and on city facilities. And so the Arts Commission is recommending partnering or entering into a contractor agreement with this artist, Keegan Allen Hayes, and I'll pass it over to Councilmember Medicus for more details on this project.
As we've gotten a lot of really good feedback, and thanks, Councilmember Johnson, on the helping us with the electrical boxes, bringing art alive in the city. And so to continue that, we're really looking at ways that we can have a community activity where we bring people together from the community to actually do some of this art under the guidance of an artist who would oversee the project. But since we've had, the Arts Commission hasn't been able to have a community event because of COVID for the last couple of years. So we haven't had our World Art Culture or any of our art workshops. And we're really anxious to get back into something that involves the whole community. And this was a project that we looked at before the pandemic. So actually, I guess it's been almost 3 years that we first started discussions with this artist. And she's done, I don't know if you had a chance to look at her website, put some examples in here, but she's done art all over and is in several galleries. So we have a budget this year that council already approved, and we'd like to get approval to use a part of that budget to do this community project. And the Arts Commission looked at different locations around the city, around City Hall, looked at the entrance to the trails, looked at inside City Hall before the flood, and really felt like the wall outside of the police station, which I've included the picture here, in between those two bump outs would be really great because people traveling on Jones Road, coming and going, can see that. And one of the things that we asked the artist to consider is a mural that would depict things that are native to Sunset Valley. So we've sent her pictures of some of our flowers on the trails, some of our wildlife, and kind of incorporating that into a colorful mural that would be welcoming and representative of Sunset Valley.
That's right.
So first of all, I just want to say I love this idea. And this artist, I looked at her website, she looks fantastic. So I love that. The one question I have is the approval. Who approves the actual design? And where is, do we have public input into it? I mean, we do have the possibility where we could put it out where, you know, like we did the trail signs, we had 2 options kind of thing. If there are like several options that we get public input or something like that, do we want to do that, or I'm just throwing this out?
Right, so we do have an art and public places policy that designates the Arts Commission to approve of art and bring art forward. We asked her if she would be able to do some sketches for our consideration. So we could put those out and say, what do people like, A or B?
Yeah.
Yeah. we could do that.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go back to the picture of the wall. And my apologies first off to everybody. I just saw a metal piece of art today that was absolutely gorgeous. And all I can see now when I look up there, it's already brown. Take this rustic piece of metal art and put it across that whole span, center it, leaving white above and white below, in between those 2 columns, and something that is permanent. And I'm talking metal art with a nice design of Sunset Valley. That would be gorgeous there, and still do your project on another property. And if anybody is wondering what I saw today, go through the villas. Now, 2 of you know what I'm talking about. Sorry, 1 of you at least.
Which?
It's the metal fence in front of one of the villas property. Yes,
Okay.
yeah. I saw that and it's been in my head, and as soon as I saw this picture, I was like, oh my gosh, a permanent piece of metal art with some designs in it of Sunset Valley, whatever design we could, you know, I'm not an artist, but a design that would cause the white to come through that metal art. And metal art is, the metal is rustic, so it's brown. I think that would be beautiful. And would be something that is low maintenance.
That's right.
Just an idea.
I wanted to say that I too love this idea, and I love the designs on there. And one of the things I particularly liked was that this can become a community project, and that we have community investment in it. I think just in general, public art is an investment in our future and our community. You think of successful communities you've seen all over this country. One of the things they always feature is public art. So I don't think we can have enough good public art projects in our city.
I mean, I love the idea of rustic metal. That has been discussed for multiple locations. That was identified with the Canales project, which I think would be great. We were just thinking that some color to, you know, pump up all the brown that we have around here would be really eye-catching and exciting. And it would go along with the art public places that has already started with the electrical boxes to have color, more color in our city. That was the thinking of the Arts Commission. And a community project where our community could come together, families could come together, all our residents could be participating in making this happen that would be owned by the residents for the city. That was our thinking.
Further discussions? And members of the public who wish to speak?
I'm here at the request of the chair of the art commission, Sasha, and I think she was on earlier. I don't know if she still is or not. But we looked at several projects and worked on this to develop, you know, what Karen has presented to y'all tonight. Also, the reason why we're bringing it forward tonight, the point that has been mentioned, is that we looked at several different artists and the cost of several different artists. And this artist is very willing to work with us and work within the conceptual designs, but she's scheduled and reserved for a lot of different times. So we would have to try to grab her now. I believe after the second week in April, she's no longer available. Sasha is in the process of polling the art commission right now for some different motif ideas in regards to reflecting the flora and fauna of Sunset Valley. So we would be able to bring you back pictures. She's also discussing, you know, like whether certain portions of it would be good for the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and we could assign times. So all of that will be vetted and brought back to you.
I'm very much in favor of this project. I've actually wanted to talk to the chief about one aspect of it though, because I'm just a little bit concerned because we already have all the car wrecks here. And when you drive, they always say, don't do something where you look that way. And so that's my one concern about the placement. And it really is just a safety concern that we don't have people's eyes going off the road on a mural. That's my only concern. I love the idea. I love the artist. I love all of it. I just have one little safety question about our little twisty turny thing, and where we already have rents, and then putting a big focal point to get people's eyes off the road. That's it. Thank you. But I'm very excited.
Chief Carter, do you have any?
Yes, I do. I think with the flashing radar sign we have now, cars are slowing down. We have, in my office, I can hear the cars kind of skidding and.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Since the sign came out. A lot of, I don't
Yeah,
That's very.
so this is, it's movable, correct?
It could be uninstalled, installed somewhere else. Yes.
If we found it was a problem, we could install it somewhere else.
Absolutely. And it'll be in it's two pieces that would go there that would be centered in the middle of that wall. And it would be on metal and it would go into where the grout is, the mortar, and that way none of the rock could be harmed.
Yeah, someone can say.
Yeah. You know, the nice thing is that people are gonna do some Instagrams and stuff, and there's plenty of parking right there, and they can park right there and take their photos.
And there's some grass in between the wall and the road. There's like a nice little walkway there.
Do you have?
I was just gonna say, someone, because we, you know, kind of told CED about the idea, I think everyone was excited and yeah, just so everyone knows, it is not painted on the rocks. It's painted, it's gonna be painted on panels that actually residents get to paint, and I'm under the direction of the art. It's not a reason, it's not. But yeah, so it'll be a community event, and you know, if this is approved, we're thinking March?
The
Right,
last
early-
weekend in March,
The,
last weekend in March.
last weekend.
Available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or was regarding your hand raised?
Done.
Here.
And there were, you had mentioned about Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. Do you know that there's now a Girl Scout troop over at the elementary school? It's troop 1980, well, they're not at the elementary school, but that's kind of where they have the meetings. 1984, which is. Yeah, a good troop number, I guess, but, you can.
Yeah.
I love this idea and. In the spirit of yes, and I want to see agenda item to get that metal sculpture in very soon, and we'll find a place for that. Excited to see more art.
Well, there's that solid rock white space that covers the AT&T junction.
Yeah.
That's all the way around the city.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any further discussions or somebody? Aaron?
Oh, sorry. I make a motion that we approve the Arts Commission project to hire Vicki McMillan Hayes to do a mural that the community paints on metal that will be installed on the police station's outer wall.
All right, so the motion to approve the collaborative outdoor art mural to be displayed, and I assume in the amount not to exceed $11,700 for that as well.
Yes.
Second from Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Great.
Thank you.
very much. All right, that's little agenda item number 15, is draft approval of the auction of surplus vehicles in section 37.04 of the city's code of ordinances, and Councilmember Reed, I believe you pulled this one. for a question.
Yeah, I had a quick little question. If we have police painted on the car, is it sold as is?
It's a decal.
Is the decal that's, okay, so there won't be anybody driving around. No, the dumb question, but I did say. With that, I make the motion to.
That's already been approved on consent.
It's not. been approved.
No, it was
No,
pulled. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
For my question.
Forgive me.
Right,
It's
so-
pulled.
So, yes, so, that we, approve the auction of surplus police vehicles under section 37.04 of the city code of ordinance.
And there's a motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Vegas. And I agree with your, let's make sure it's not.
Yeah.
Look like a vehicle. And also just, I always have to bring this up because, I, as the purchaser of a previous police vehicle, let's please make sure we remove all the spent bullet casings from. The middle dash area. There are actually some light bullets there.
Right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
Was in early, taking off the decals.
Oh,
So you asked it. I'm like, what?
okay, good.
All right, council, that's, our last item for the evening is the presentation, discussion, and possible action on initial repairs, possible renovations to City Hall after this water damage incident. So it's a carry forward, or, carrying on a continuation of our session of our, work session. What we're really looking for is direction and, consensus on where we want to make some decisions, particularly around the needed repairs to get council chamber, back up as a priority. And I think from my perspective, kind of carrying that conversation forward, as the city administrator stated, a decision about the flooring, so we can, even if we're gonna get the bumping done to assess, is that something that with the amount of work that we decided to do concrete, or if it helps us with the insurance adjustment. A decision about the opening of that space as another item. And I think also I would like us to move forward with the, just moving forward with, scanning all of our documents, so we take care of that while we're in this process as well. Matt, did you want to present anything else on this as an introduction, or we covered all then for council direction and decision at this point, or?
Yeah, and just as far as, this is an update, because Kyle wasn't at the work session, but, and he can answer more questions. He's gonna be working with, on the finance side of things, working with the adjusters. A benefit if we did go with ServPro, that's what they they do, so they're used to working with insurance adjusters, but in terms of accounting, Kyle, I believe you created a line item, right? So we didn't, obviously none of this is in the budget. Yes, we did set aside 150,000 out of repair and replacement for just general city hall or just general facilities repairs, because there were some things we wanted to do. So there were some things already we wanted to do, but again, any like invoices we received from ServPro, we're gonna have a special line item, so that we know, for coding, for accounting purposes, but again, we're hoping, anything, especially up front that we're gonna be paying to ServPro, we should be receiving, those costs should be recouped by what we get from insurance, so. Anything else you wanna add?
The plan for tracking it is just I created an account called City Hall for the 2022 flood. And we'll just put all the renovations and repairs and everything into that bucket. And then we'll track what's gonna be repairs versus improvements on a separate spreadsheet, and then just make one adjustment once we've resolved the insurance claim.
Sorry.
So I would suggest, I think we're all in agreement, we have to do something. I would suggest that we start a motion that lists all the elements. If somebody could type it as we kind of go through it. Cause like one will be, one motion is to, go ahead and, open the space up, by the court. That might be part of the motion. It might be, we buff the concrete floors, evaluate and then make the decision. We prioritize the council chambers. We are showing options for the luxury vinyl tile. What needs to be done later.
Talk about putting the
Wire.
conduits behind the wall.
Conduits behind the wall. Issue RFP for the kitchen. Renovation, issue RFP for document. Micro completion, whatever. That be everything?
Yes. Wall. Is that like change?
Yes.
Is that for AV? Or not?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're just doing categories, right?
Well, I'm just kind of putting all the elements we want in the motion, to make sure all these things get done. Yeah, that's not, yeah.
I guess we're already gonna.
Yeah, we are getting new furniture, so, furniture, modular furniture options. Determine, I assume paint is gonna be the same color, right?
Yeah, we'll go with the same color that's in City Hall that we've been moving.
We'll do that throughout the building.
The TV that we have, is that big enough? Do we need a bigger TV?
We need a large, we need.
Oh, you always need a larger
We need
TV.
a larger screen.
Always go with the larger TV.
And I think, we need an additional, or I don't know, we need to look at screening options, just to make it easier for, sometimes it's, sometimes where people are
Yeah, but
sitting
you
in
can't see
public,
it.
then you have to, everyone, so just, we need to.
I'll have to sit on one
review-
side.
And again, that would be outside the scope, probably of what we're gonna get for insurance, but now we're doing all this work, it's the time to do that. So AV.
Review storage options for the, art fest. Art.
That's, you'll talk about the digging out, space for the trenching, right? And I think that's, regardless of the flooring, we want to try to put the wiring in the floor.
Yeah.
A lot of questions on some of these.
Yeah, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm a big fan of putting the wire in conduit on the walls, but we've only opened up the bottom 2 feet, and there are at least two doorways that would go across on the north side. And so that would have to go all around doorways, but that's not open. So you're talking about busting
Yep.
that all open?
sheetrock.
No, I think we're talking about just the lower half that's already open.
Yeah.
That lower conduit going up probably about where the camera is and then leaving the rest of the conduit for now. Just putting the section of conduit that's already kind of hanging there exposed. Putting that in.
Okay.
And
And
with-
there were a bunch of audio wires that came through, but.
Yeah.
I could draw schematics for now, but like there's like a conduit that runs down to. Well, I guess we move those around because we used to be on the corner.
Refer to what you're seeing in your mind. For us, that is the corner that I looked at that she was talking about going behind the sheetrock. So there's 2 feet up and you've got all the conduit coming down from, is there a camera there? Yes, brand new camera, comes down, goes across. So she's saying all of that conduit and going up to the camera, going behind the wall. Now, we have to cut that wall because it's not cut in order to put that behind.
And so yes.
Yeah, and then I think, I don't remember who it was we were talking about, maybe possibly putting on the AV office side and access where all that conduit part exists.
Put it, it's like a door.
A door.
So you can just open it up and you can see all the
So
electric.
that all the conduits kind of exposed, if you need to do something, get easy access to it.
Okay. The opening up where the court is. The mezzanine is above, right there, and if you take that, obviously. When Servpro came in, they're like, that's not load bearing, but do we know that?
They'll have to evaluate that. It may require a column. So if it does, it would require a column. So I think they're prepared for that.
Does that change our mind about that, if there's a,
I like that idea of a little library area.
so, but it was the idea to. There's a hallway that kind of goes to the restrooms, was that still gonna be a hall, like a wall, or is that gonna be open as well?
It can be open as well. Yeah, open it up. So there may be a column there, but it can be open on the side.
Okay, just so we're all,
Yeah.
once we see it, we don't say, why is there a beam there?
Yeah.
That's good. Like, the diocese, to evaluate.
I have modular furniture and dice
Oh,
options.
there you go. Perfect.
Painting throughout building. Other AV options.
We gotta have a proper burial for the dais. I don't know. The name is such love. So much.
We're a city that believes in sustainability. Reuse and.
Let me review this. Oh, and it's a part of. But obviously, we're gonna be, this will be a part of. It's like the kitchen remodel and any other remodel, just prevention, prevent, wrapping. Maybe, and we're gonna be looking at, what was it, the meter alerts,
Yeah, and so
and
just those things too, yeah. And then we have those into.
If you have any interest in doing, I put it out in the restroom, like they didn't have to bust out any walls because of the tile that goes up.
Mhm.
Would that look ugly to just do that everywhere?
No, they do that in hospitals and many places.
And
They do
kennels.
tile on.
And kennels, yeah.
Because they have drains in the floor.
Well,
Yeah.
there's no drainage to the rest of the place, so it would. And. Or like it would. We wouldn't have to do the wall next time, we just have to. Of course, I'm gonna have.
We don't want that.
That's true.
Yeah.
We're just, okay.
Yeah, so I kind of went through and I'd like to share. So, I really like the vinyl planking idea for, with the, absorbing, the sound absorbing thing throughout the whole thing.
Except maybe the council chambers. Because if you're
Uh,
using.
these are
that
just
for-
my ideas.
I know. I
So
just
I'm
wanted
just,
to-
I just want to share
Go
my ideas.
Go ahead.
So whatever we end up with, but I think it would be easy to move the furniture around much better in there. It would help with the sound in there, especially once we put the panels up that didn't get ruined because they weren't there. They're having wood put around them. So we'd have more of a sound baffle with that. So I really like that idea. Replacing, of course, all the drywall and everything. I thought, Carolyn, you said if we do the vinyl planking, we could actually do a channel, a bump out against that back wall, that's stone that could run electrical through it, so we have electrical outlets all against that wall? Is that what you were saying?
So I talked about putting it, trenching into the concrete, not necessarily along the back wall, probably where the existing, there's like a electrical outlet right there. Probably heading to there, and having the conduit hopefully be good enough for like what we have here. And as well as the AV options too, so that we're plugging microphones in. So that way, when this council chamber is not being used for a council meeting, all we're doing is plugging those microphones into the box on the floor versus us having to bring wires from the AV room and tape them down on the ground. That creates a lot of work. So, if that's a good plan to trench it, if we're doing other type of floor, if we're definitely gonna do the concrete, you're gonna see that trench. I mean, you just have to be prepared for that.
Okay.
It's gonna be busy.
So I have a question about these tables. Aren't these supposed to be plugs?
Yes.
And is anybody using these?
No, we didn't have it. The councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson was putting them together. We're about to get, they could have been done, just didn't get to that point where we got them all put together and put together.
So we could have a dais furniture that had these in them, that
And then
you wouldn't have wires, yeah, you just plug, because I've never seen the ones in City Hall actually work,
Yeah,
do they? Those ones in the ground, there's some of these in the floor.
I think the plugs work.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is. Okay, okay.
Well, no, the ones in front, not here, but at
City
Hall. That one does work. I mean, that
Okay.
projector report on that
Okay.
screen.
Anyway, I think it'd be nice to have furniture that has the hookups up on the table rather than us running wires everywhere. Anyway, more outlets there. I really like the idea of opening up that bump out where the court is and putting the library books over there and having a place where people could sit and read the library books, have a nice little book there. I love that idea. The water fountain, I like the idea of putting in a bottle fill station. I don't know if we have to tear up the whole wall to do that, or can we put a bottle filling station in where one of those fountains are, but I love that idea. They'll save on these things. And then, let's see, I think it would be so much better to have a kitchen with a 3-compartment sink. That sink that's in there, you're doing events there, it's shallow, it gets filled with cups, nobody washes them. I think if we could have a 3-compartment sink, it would be more functional for events. And a commercial refrigerator, freezer would be great. So having that and a warming oven, I think if that's something we can put in there, would make that more functional for our event space. So I love that idea. Let's see. The other thing I had was I don't think the countertops necessarily have to match the kitchen and the match, and neither do the flooring. I mean, the flooring can be different in different parts of the building too. And of course, the electrical system needs to be done. The furniture, I'd love to see us get rid of those big, heavy chairs and the table, although they're cool and they're comfortable to sit in. They're not functional when you go in there to try to do an event. You can't move them. So if we had nice looking furniture that was flexible, so that those 2 rooms, especially the council chambers and the lobby, could be flex space, where we could move things around for different types of events, that would be awesome. Let's see. Those are my thoughts, anyway.
The council input. I think Rudy and I talked about the access to the attic.
Yeah.
By trying to create more overhead space, because right now there's that big lip that hangs down. If there's some way that we could,
Shave that sheet.
shave that off towards an angle, so that people could just that space, or just make it easier to because I think the attic is a great space for some storage, but the problem is getting up there and down there. We can make it a little bit easier for that, and I think that'd be nice if we could do something about access to the attic as well.
If we went that far to do that, do we also want to add a lift? You could easy to put things up in that attic.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some heavy items that we could store in the attic.
Right.
So I knew that was part of the, one of the things CED was looking at with the redesign. I think they want to see pricing for that. and
Of
see
course.
what it possibly be, because that obviously be a big ticket item, but it's like, that attic space, I had never been up there before, and it's huge.
It's considerable, yeah.
The other thing we found while we're up there is a dialogue of the city, that's just sitting in the corner. Maybe we could get an updated version of that. It would be nice to study like that. I've never seen that before. It's from when the, we think it was from when the meadows were coming in to do development, because it's just got the meadows. The villas isn't there yet.
Yeah.
And it's got this, these little models of houses and all this stuff.
We should do that more often.
They're not cheap.
Yeah.
However, I just want to say the Arts Commission supplies are extremely heavy.
Yeah.
And taking those sandwich board signs up and down, even if there's a lift, and then all of the tents, it's intense. So if we could get some kind of a storage building or something that we'll put somewhere else on the city property that doesn't get it, that is secure from rats. Like, we don't have a rat infested building like we did before. That would be, I think, preferable.
Yeah, we had evaluated storage options. Oh, we did, storage options.
Oh.
You were thinking top. somewhere else
Yeah,
on campus.
yeah, because it doesn't need to be taken up an office space in a building, and it doesn't even need to be air conditioned. It just needs to be secure from, vermin.
But accessible.
And accessible for loading, because Public Works now, pulls all that, loads it on the trucks and brings it up to the site for setup, and then tears it down and brings it back. If we have to add going up and down into an attic, I think it's maybe a logistical nightmare.
The feedback for staff. Thoughts? So I just kind of wanted, because Barbara, you're still with us. I just kind of wanted you, can you see this list that we're sharing on the screen?
Yes, sir.
So, I kind of have to go through and tell you each one, but some of this is getting the building, as we discussed, back to a functional city hall, council chamber, and some of it is, expanding. So obviously the RFP for kitchen, the RFP for digitization, the other AV options like larger, more screens. Do you need us to go through and say, okay, this is repair and getting us back to functioning, and saying this is beyond the scope of that, and so we're gonna have to go through the normal purchasing process? Would that be helpful, or
Can I help with some of that?
Carolyn's gonna help with some of that?
So, one of the things we would need to do, if we're happy with CertPro to move forward, council would authorize CertPro to begin some of that restoration effort. So for the things that are up here on this list, part of that would be getting that council chamber, moving the conduit would be included in that. So I was kind of making a list, basically we would attempt to buff the flooring, and then we will consider our options on that. The painting is part of that because it's going to be part of the walls, basically. Prevention, for wrapping ties, we got to do that before we, put the stuff in. But obviously, so RFP, we're looking at kitchen is one, digitization is one, attic access would be a separate one, I would believe, so that we aren't, muddling up the two together. And so I think what we would have to do is, regarding the flooring, is once they buff the flooring, kind of then evaluate where we are. And if we're going to move, at that point, we would probably bring back, here's some LVT samples, show us which rooms LVT. The flooring does go throughout all rooms, basically. And so I think that would be a next kind of thing after we try to buff the floor and see if it's even if the concrete's salvageable. Open the court area to the lobby would be part of this, because we're making that a functional space, and we've kind of discussed that we think it's going to be a wash as far as cost will be, because it's gonna, they're gonna have to do the drywall basically. So I think those are kind of where we're looking at. Obviously, furniture and IS options are gonna be a separate thing we're doing. Any larger screen, painting throughout the building, I mean, that's part of the walls that we're gonna have to paint the walls to close it off anyhow, so to get that to that level, so. I think we have a pretty good idea on those, of where that line is between the two.
The action that we need from council tonight is authorizing Servpro to begin the restoration, which includes helping the floor, doing conduit behind the walls, opening up the court areas of the lobby, painting throughout the building, and prevention. Kind of like you're kind of like,
I think that's kind of, did I capture the split here now? So all of this would be council action, Servpro getting the building working again. That should all be covered by insurance, right? And then everything beyond that is kind of our expanded plans for, getting
The microphones in the floor may not be covered.
That probably won't be.
But Barbara, we could start the work.
Oh,
right?
I'm
We're
not
gonna have-
I know you have to start the work, but I'm just saying that, and again, this is gonna be a kind of a fine line for you to get back in the emergency capacity that you're going under.
So I think the wiring for microphones, and that's also dependent on the flooring probably, because I don't know how council feels about it, if they can buff the floor and the floor looks great, are we saving the concrete? And do we want a trench in it that we're gonna be, that's very obvious? So.
Some of it's wait and see.
So that will be kind of, I think that one will come back with people to, when we get to that flooring decision, that the buffing is not working.
that's where it is. And then we'll go after a public comment.
I didn't see the water bottle thing on here.
Oh,
And yeah, we can put that down
it's,
there.
yeah, it's a part of the, and that'll be of course expanded. So what are we calling that? It's kind of the
Bottle fill station.
bottle fill
water.
station. We kind of wanted the water fountain.
Sort of like what we have here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like this.
And we talked about maybe putting a mural there, but again, we talked about doing that for this all happen. So this was kind of in the plans. This could come, that project
Yeah.
could come from that that money we already set aside.
And I think we'd already planned on, we were gonna install the water fountain, staff, so I don't think it was gonna be
That's like an in-house.
it was gonna be mostly in-house kind of work.
Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Reese. I think you guys are doing a really great job with all of this, and thank y'all all for your work. It's a good list. Just a few things that I didn't hear mentioned that I just want to, I'll stop there. I really like the City Hall has now, and I understand the idea to modernize it. But there's some, if we do go the route of vinyl planking, there's some really nice fake wood look that is, I had to go like do this in some stores to make sure, because it was so good. So I would encourage us to go that route to preserve the current atmosphere. And I think it would go well with the colors of the house. So I'm just gonna toss that out as a personal preference. I've heard people talking, and I may have heard wrong, about painting partway up the walls, which in my quite a lot of experience with remodeling never works well, because you always have these dashes. And so the only way we do that is if we do like a chair rail like that. And I'm not saying that that's a bad idea to do a chair rail in there, because we do occasionally put chairs up, and so it might be nice to have a chair rail. And I would still make that a different surface than the wall, so that it would look better. But I really do think we need a plan. If I heard wrong, great. If we don't, we really do need a plan to go all the way up the walls, because it's good. Then another thing that I didn't hear us talk about was, if we stay with the concrete floors, and I did this in my home, there's a self-leveling concrete that you can float over the top of it. And so that would be another way to do that, and it looks great at my house. I mean, it all depends on who does it, but one place I love it in my house, and one place not so much. But it can be really amazing and look like marble. It's a very cool option, and I just hadn't heard anybody talk about that, so I thought I'd toss it out. And And then I just had a couple of questions. I hope we do pay some attention to the sound improvement. I know we are working on it, but you know, can't say that enough. And I also wondered if there was additional storage space over the rooms over on that side that we might also, and I don't know that, but I'm just like, the outside of the building looks like this. There's space over there. Is there space over here where it's lower? And I don't know. I just thought I'd toss that out there. Maybe there's not, but it's questions to ask. Thank you all so much for all your thoughtful consideration.
For a minute.
Oh, they brought up, with that closet where the tables and chairs used to be stored. So every time I had to go in there and get tables, they were under that shelf. And you're like banging your head. Are we gonna be able to get those shelves?
That's
out of
gonna
there?
be part of the digitization, making sure those, large files are digitized as well, so.
Okay,
We'll double check. Some of them I think have been digitized, so we'll see what we can get rid of beforehand. But, I think, yeah, that's part of the digitization.
We want to make that room entirely for storing of, and that it's easy to get in.
Yeah, the tables and chairs would be good.
Yeah, so that's what it'll be designed for, so we can get the plans.
Because I think the action we need to take tonight is to authorize Servpro to begin the restoration process and then authorize staff to or direct staff to create RFPs for these items. I think we'll need to bring those back before we actually formally authorize them, but I think the only action we need to take is to authorize Servpro to begin the restoration process. Is that correct?
I think that top part is part of that restoration.
And yeah, and so I guess as part of that is, you know, that they're gonna begin with the buffing the concrete and then we'll come, you know, come back and.
And we'll come back with the wiring options too, because that'll be part of that discussion. Okay.
That's what the commission has reads.
So I move that, council authorizes Servpro to begin the restoration process and to incorporate the top 1, 2, 3, 6 items into the actions for staff. That's it.
There's seconds. Thank you.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to nay. All right, thank you. Thanks, staff, for all your hard work on
Yes.
that. And I know, again, thank you to all the staff that were working over the holidays on remediating the fund. Council, we are out of the agenda. We have a return to the doc. All the people say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned at 8:30 p.m. Good work on it.
Wow. Wow.
Let's take care. Yeah, I didn't.
Made the motion.
Right. You're seconded.
I thought Chuck,
Everybody seconded.
everybody.
Matt, were you just asking about who made the motion?
Barbara?
I'm sorry, who made the motion to adjourn?
Reeds and Young seconded.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Good night, everyone.